y'all doing? This is Impact Africa Network. Actually, it's not Impact Africa Network.
This is Chini, Maji podcast.
This is Chini, Maji podcast by Impact Africa Network.
Yes.
Let's get that right.
Yeah, so you're here with Mumbi and Mark.
Yes.
Yeah, we're super excited for this piece. This is something we've wanted to do for the longest time, so I'll just let Mark do a small intro, then we can get started.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, I think this is one of those things where we will continuously be talking about because I really believe that it is the key driver of performance or not or otherwise. Culture is everything. And today we'll be. Last week the Endeavor report came out that basically did an analysis between the performance in the Silicon Savannah ecosystem and the Bangalore ecosystem, and they did an analysis as to how those ecosystems look like and the results that they have created. And one of the things that basically the underlying kind of like the headline of that whole thing is that Bangalore has created scaled up tech companies, and Silicon Savannah has not, right? We have struggled to actually perform within the same time frame, despite having a lot of inputs, for example, grant funding and a lot of interventions and accelerators and hubs and all kinds of energy and capital coming in. We have not been able to manifest those into performance, right? As would have been expected. And the other things that stood out to us in that article was this idea that they pointed out that in Silicon Savannah there is a bunch of expert entrepreneurs. Mm-hmm. They also talked about what else did they talk about? A couple of other things that I wanted to micro businesses. There's a bunch of micro businesses as opposed to companies that scale. And then there's also the lack of experienced entrepreneurs participating in influential positions, right? Yeah. And my view on that is those are actually symptoms, right? Those are actually symptoms of an underlying issue, which we are going to unpack today. At least we're going to try and unpack. What are your thoughts, maybe?
Yeah, that's exactly it. So I think I was super excited when I ran into that report because it was everything we had been talking about, but then finally having numbers and facts, like actual facts on the ground attached to that, for me was super exciting. And just to give a bit more context, when you look at, for example, Bangalore and Nairobi, there's a very clear comparison as to, I think we'll also share this with you, but then there's a very clear comparison as to how the ecosystems have grown. So for Bangalore, they were talking about how there's this company called Infosys that had all these employees who interacted with it from the minute it started to the minute it grew to become this big thing. Then all this, or rather not all, but a good number of these people who went through this process are the people who went out to start other companies. They had some sort of direct influence on the starting of other startups and other companies, and they can clearly show that in a sort of a circular way. Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm. Then they were showing now the contrast for that in Nairobi, where the most influential ecosystem actors had zero to very little entrepreneurial experience. They had probably not worked in a startup. It was very clear in the comparison, and then they go on to even give recommendations and all that. I think we've shared this on our social media, so we'll definitely share this again. I think it's very important for anyone who's in the startup eco, whether you're a startup founder, you're just a startup supporter, it's very important for you to kind of go through this.
Yeah, and that's a very interesting thing. If you look at you bring a very important point, which is former employees of Infosys went out there and founded companies. Yeah. So they actually developed the experience and then they went out and did stuff, and it kind of grew like that. I think right now, if you look at our ecosystem, we have a couple of companies that are starting to develop those types of cultures, or at least the beginnings of those types of things. We've got Africa's Talking that is creating a very unique culture. Exactly. And then we have Cellulant, obviously, that has done the same thing too. So the question becomes, will these two companies birth in the next round of entrepreneurs over the next 10 years, right? It's yet to be seen. But look, we're talking about what has happened over the last 10 years. If we have not been able to actually, as an ecosystem, perform to the level of as expected, we have to really kind of look deeper than just some of those kind of objective truths. For example, like, okay, we haven't had an Infosys in this market, and so we haven't had people going out. But is that all that it takes to actually build an ecosystem? Do you have to have a mothership first to actually create startups? I don't believe so.
Yeah,
I mean, that's
very true. And I think something I also want to mention is how ecosystems grow are very particular to countries. There's no sort of copy-paste type model. It's very particular to, you know, how the conditions and the situations that are ongoing. Yeah, it's very particular to, sorry for that. Yeah, but it's very particular to the conditions in the country, and that's exactly what Mark is saying. It may have worked for them, but then here we have a very different situation. So what are we gonna do with the sort of situation that we have? So that's what we did.
Yeah, and so we thought we would take a look at another ecosystem and say, let's get another control situation, right? And see what other ecosystems are out there and how have they performed and how have they grown and what's going on. Because, you know, people can say that Bangalore has a 1.2 billion, 1.2 billion population market at hand in India to actually sell into, so you can actually easily, quote unquote, scale up companies. But, you know, is there another ecosystem that has the same, quote unquote, market challenges that we think we do? Because I don't believe we have a market challenge. I just think we have a vision challenge, right? We just have a vision challenge here, because if you look at the two companies that we mentioned, Africa Stalking and Cellulant, they're executing a Pan-African market plan.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
we don't have a market challenge.
Yeah.
We just have a perception and an understanding challenge, I believe. So if what we decided to do is look somewhere else to find a control situation, and we looked at the Tel Aviv ecosystem in Israel. And there's a documentary online that you should definitely take a look at. Just on YouTube, just search for Israel ecosystem, and I think it'll be one of the first ones that come.
Yeah, should be like the second one. Yeah.
Eye-opening. I mean, this is something that will kind of, for all intents and purposes, put everything in your face in terms of just being able to say, wow, okay, this is an ecosystem that has some operating conditions that are very challenged, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they have a population of 8 million people in Israel. They have no local market surrounding them, right? Their market is North America.
Exactly.
Right?
And yeah, currently they're actually the biggest startup ecosystem outside of the US, with around, they're saying up to over 1,000 early stage startups. Like literally, they have the most startups per capita in the world.
It's pretty insane.
That's crazy. That means they were actually talking in the documentary and saying that if you threw a stone, you'd hit a startup. Like everywhere you go, everyone you know works in a startup. Like it's just everywhere.
It's just how they operate.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing is, we also have a ton of startups here.
Exactly.
But qualitatively, I can tell you, the type of problems they're working on, and the type of the guy in that documentary talks about it. They have deep technology, kind of their tech talent is, they basically dominate the whole information security market, right? Out of 1,500 information security startups globally, I think they had something like 450 or some crazy number like that.
Exactly.
And that's because the Israeli army, you know, basically everybody every single citizen has to go through mandatory military service. I think it's 3 years or something like that.
Yeah, I think it was 2. Okay, yeah, but for a good amount of time.
Right.
Yeah.
And they develop a couple of things. They develop that, they get access to that technical knowledge, and they also develop this leadership skills that they come up with. But the point is that you're right, they have an abundance of startups, right? A proliferation of startups, an inundation of startups, but it's the quality of the startups.
Exactly.
And that's why they're the number 2 destination for global venture capital, right? So we were going through some of the issues that they face. Some of the operating environment, 8 million people, no already local market, geographically speaking, and hostile neighbors, right?
Exactly.
The Middle East is not the most...
They're in the middle of, a lot.
The Middle East is not the most peaceful place in the world.
Yeah.
But these people out here being the number 2 ecosystem in the world, right? So we thought like we would say, okay, what is it? Mm-hmm. Right? Like what makes them different? And so we have, we thought we'd kind of dive into a couple of things, maybe the technical capabilities in the ecosystem, which we've kind of touched on a little bit.
Yeah.
And then also dive into the more nuanced kind of like soft stuff, which is the culture, right?
Exactly.
So yeah, I mean, we've talked already a bit about their tech talent, their deep tech talent.
And that's exactly it, because if you compare from what we were seeing on the documentary, they were talking about them, like pretty much a huge amount of the population having, like, all these technical capabilities. And actually, most companies were coming to hire there, such that as of now they have like 4% unemployment, which is not even healthy for any nation at this point, because that means there's literally no one else left to hire. And that says a lot, because of course startups have to flow with talent. That's a fact.
Mm-hmm.
So you see, but then at the same time, just to kind of, this is a bit, I'm spiraling a bit, but then they were talking about how this also can tend to be a choke point for some startups, in terms of, if a big company is coming and looking to hire and I am a startup, then it becomes a bit of a problem trying to figure out, trying to get the talent, trying to attract the talent to the, to the very, very early stage startup. So that was just a random problem they were having. But then, coming back to the point, it was more on, there's this talent everywhere, and plenty of talent, and with a speciality focus here.
Right, and I think we from a comparative standpoint, we have talent as well.
Yeah.
Right? We have people come from JKU,
Exactly.
we have people come from KU, we have people come from Nairobi University. The
Like
talent
me.
is there, like Mumbi, right?
Yeah, like me.
So the talent is there. We have a bigger population than they do, so just in terms of raw numbers, we probably would have the same numbers of engineers in the market. The other thing that they talked about was startup experienced advisors.
Exactly.
They have the situation where people who've actually been there, done that, whether it's in Silicon Valley or in other ecosystems, are available to actually advise these startups, and those startups are benefit from that. And when you look at our ecosystem, I guess this is part of what the Endeavor report was talking about. What's when you compare on an apples to apples comparison, what do we look like when it comes to experienced startup advisors?
The guy said something I loved. He said, "Here we make experienced founders the heroes." That stuck with me, because ideally, I think that is something we're still not doing. It's also tied to the fact that we've not had too many success stories, but then at the same time, we don't need 1 million success stories to start, that process. So it's more of being very actively aware to ensure that, the right people, or rather the people with experience, are the people deploying this knowledge to other people, to other younger startup founders. So that's something that's definitely missing here.
Yeah, but let's be careful about saying what experienced startup founders are. I take experience to be somebody who's actually started something.
Yeah.
And even if it's not about the results, right? So we have a lot of people who have started stuff here, and they have valuable experience, and they talked about that too. They talked about the fact that if you have actually tried to start a company and it didn't work out, they embrace you. They're like, yo, you have experience that I need, come and help me do this thing.
And that's exactly it, Mark, because that's actually where I was headed.
Okay.
Because ideally, experience does not mean
success.
Exactly.
Quote unquote, in terms of...
Yeah,
right.
And that's why I'm actually very careful about using the word successful founders as opposed to experienced founders. Because I've started businesses, but then I know some few things that someone else who's about to go through that doesn't know. And that's exactly, so it's...
And you've
it's
been very helpful.
Everyone who's a step ahead, that's an experienced founder.
Right.
So that's what it means.
Right.
So having people with this entrepreneurial experience, that's the key.
That's what you're talking about. And it's so real, because we tend, and this ties down to maybe some other cultural thing.
Exactly.
We only elevate people who appear to be doing well. We only follow people like that. I mean, that's a thing here in Silicon Valley, which is very different than
it's
them.
actually like an African thing. I've told you a story before how I have a friend who's running a startup in Nigeria and was doing this e-commerce platform, and then it failed, and he reached out, he's like, tell me what to do, and I was telling him, no, this is okay, this just means you know what not to do the next time. And for him, that he literally texted me the words, our culture does not forgive. It's more of this culture of, you started this thing, now you failed, now you're a failure, go get a job. Or go do your masters, But then that's not how it works.
That's
it's
not
more
how it works in the real world.
So they were talking, for Tel Aviv, they were talking about how some of the most successful startups are people who failed 2, 3, 4 times. And then
this
like the 5th time is like the charm, and
Right.
And that doesn't exist here. It's
right.
more of you failed
and you're done. And it's so, that's such an important element, right? To understand that if you're an entrepreneur out there listening to this, you are basically you're basically taking you're practicing. Okay,
Exactly.
your first 1, 2, or 3, you're practicing. You're out there in the field, getting better. And so it depends on how you perceive that and how you look at that. I actually have failed at least 2 businesses. You know, in the States, when the undersea cable came to Kenya and we had this whole BPO explosion, I actually launched a company when I was in Silicon Valley. The idea was the company would provide outsourced sales support for Silicon Valley startups. I actually hired 5 people here in the market, and I was training them at night. Well, at night over there, in the morning over here. So I was working a full-time job and trying to actually start this company and actually looking for customers during the day while trying to do my 9 to 5.
Exactly.
Right? So, and I got my first contract. Unfortunately, we went into the Christmas holidays and everybody just shuts down. And when everybody came up for air in January, it was just like, you know, that contract was gone. I was just going after my first contract, and it just didn't happen. And you cannot side hustle if you're trying to do stuff at a level of excellence or a level of where people have high expectations. Ain't gonna cut it, man. I've been down that road, tried it, and I just gotta tell you, man. Like, you know what I learned from I learned from that. The one thing I took away from that is you are not going to build something meaningful where people have high expectations of your service or product on a side hustle. It's just not gonna happen. Right? So that's one of the. That's
also another key thing. It still comes back to the culture.
It still comes back to the culture. But let's keep going down this list of some of the elements that we pulled out of that the documentary. So we've talked about startup excellence advisors, funding. So funding was also something that they actually tackled 20 years ago. The government of Israel kind of put a matching fund. They put a matching fund program to encourage local angels to put money into startups. The interesting thing is, there was a very interesting line that one of those folks in the documentary said. Some founders were like, "Yeah, I don't need that matching fund. I'm good." You know what? Because they were building products that people invested. You see, people get this thing backwards. It is not about capital per se. Capital is fuel. Capital is a tool. You've got to get to a point where your business can attract capital to do something meaningful. It is not capital will help you figure out your business model. No, capital will actually only come, especially in our ecosystem where we exist today, capital will only come to you if you have actually proven your business model. You have traction and you have a clearly defined, disciplined path to growth. Anything else that you're coming and having these ideas are not what the napkin that's been written on. We can give you a ton of ideas and you can go pitch them. And you'll just be wasting your time. That was very interesting for me. The guy said a lot of entrepreneurs in a lot of founders, and they said they basically didn't want to take the money, right? Because they knew what they were building. They could actually get to traction and actually attract real valuable venture capital. Because also that capital maybe did not come with any kind of strategic support in terms of entering the North American market, which is probably what they're building for. So it's better for them to go get a VC in North America. Let's not get it twisted. Money is not the answer first. The answer is actually product market fit. Is actually having a solution that can actually, when you put money behind it, it'll perform. Anyway, I'm kind of getting on my
that's exactly it, because we've talked about this before.
Right.
So I understand the importance, and I think we've seen it over and over again
all the time
in the market. And I have also been a culprit of this back in my startup days. You know, where you have this idea, then you think, oh, I'm gonna get money to implement this. No, it's more implement, prove, wrap it up, then go sell something. Such that I'm giving you money to go do X.
Y and Z.
Very clearly.
Right, precisely.
So
awesome.
That's exactly it,
So the other thing too, so let's go into some of the more nuanced things, which I thought was very interesting, the culture aspect of it. So did we talk already about how they had to do military service? They had to do mandatory military service.
We mentioned that.
And this is what we call is a leadership creation machine, right? Every single person, once they hit a certain age, I don't know if it's 18 or 19, somewhere in there.
Once you just finish, I think it's high school, you going to university, straight ahead to
3 years of military service.
Then after that you can go do your thing.
what that creates is an amazing mentality, an amazing mindset.
It's a mindset shift 101.
Right.
That's exactly it.
And I think that's probably one of their secret superpowers, right? Because they have this population of people who are doers, this population of people who have esprit de corps, as they call it, like we're in this together, you know, a bunker mentality. It's not, I think that whole process just cleanses your bullshit, right? If I can call a spade a spade.
No, it's very true,
right?
Because for me, I think the two things I picked up, I think you just actually mentioned both of them. It's a collaboration aspect. They're used to working as a team. It's the army. Everything you do, you see your people as it's your battalion, man. It's you. This are your dudes. You're doing it together. And the other thing was mindset. That you leave feeling invincible. It's more I can do everything. I can do anything.
Right.
So it's you don't even
you don't cut corners.
Yeah, exactly. And even how you sing things. That's actually a third thing. Discipline. Yeah, that's exactly it.
Right.
You're disciplined in your approach, disciplined in your execution, disciplined in your operations. That's exactly it.
Right. You're not trying to kind of be slick with it, right? You're like, okay, what do we need to do? Let's go do that, right? It's not like, oh, but you know, somehow maybe I'll slip this under the rug, which is something that is endemic in our society.
That's exactly it, yeah.
So, and then this other thing that the very supportive culture, you know, everybody's kind of like rooting for one another.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? And you compare that with our culture here, right? Would you say that we root for one another?
So
like that?
I don't know. This just reminded me of something. We were actually having a discussion, I think, last week about the idea where when you're building something, you're very quiet with it until
it's a secret.
It's a secret because you want to only show it once it's successful. That's like a thing. That's why you'll see most people who are founders. Even when you check their LinkedIn profiles, has nothing to do with them
which is crazy.
Being a founder. Ideally, it's because it's a culture of bashing, because I don't want to talk about it until I know it's worked. Because if I talk about it, then it fails, then it's more now you know.
Yeah.
So if you have that culture of support where even if it fails,
you're in a safe space.
Yeah, exactly. That's actually it. It's actually that mentality. You need to be in a safe space for you to feel
that you can put yourself out there.
Exactly.
And this is so interesting because I mean, we were, I'm working with one of our portfolio companies that we're supporting and advising. And this founder, if you looked at her LinkedIn, had nothing to do with founder or CEO of XY company. She had something like, something completely, I don't know what it was. It was like a digital professional or something like that. Okay. And I was like, what are you doing? Don't do that. Own this, own it, be about it. And you know what's interesting? I also know another very cool experienced local business guy. He's also a returnee. Like 10 years ago, built a company and exited. And he was saying, because I was telling him, hey, listen, I want to do a press run and actually start talking about some of the things that we're doing with Impact Africa Network, because it's really about being visible and starting to call a spade and being out there. And he was like, yo, man, I don't know if that's a good idea, because, people here, they'll shy away from you until you have a win. I'm like, I'm winning. I'm alive.
That's I think that's exactly it. It's for me actually, like when we were talking, I just realized that's it. It's a culture you're not feeling safe.
People don't feel safe.
Bashing.
People don't feel safe.
So you need to reach a level where you're comfortable with failure. It's not a thing, because
we need to change this.
This guy was talking about how entrepreneurs are like-minded because they're all, I don't want to say crazy, but then it's like you're just delusional.
They're delusional.
And that was exactly it. You're delusional to believe that you build this thing where thousands of people will be looking for you, and you'll exceed all odds to build this amazing thing.
We have a perfect example of this in our ecosystem. Ken Jorge.
Yeah.
Dude was delusional for many years.
Exactly. I mean? 9 years to be precise, man.
Dude was delusional for a long time. Yeah. But you know what? Look where he's at right now.
Exactly.
Right? So the thing is, it's this idea that we bash each other a lot, right? I've been bashed. I've taken my fair share of bashings from the ecosystem, and I look at them and I'm like, what the hell? So anyway, I don't want to go into my own stories, but it's so interesting that people actually, you wonder, are they trying to root for each other to fail? What's the deal?
I've never understood, because for me, I see anyone who's aligned in the tech, or in my thinking, in where I want to see the ecosystem, in where I want to see startups, should be the people I keep closest. So if anyone came and was trying to do something, that my first instinct would be support. Like, what can I do, man? Like, tell me.
Not hide in the bushes and wait to see what's gonna happen. And then when you see them succeeding, you jump out and say, hey, how you doing? What's going on?
No, but like, that's exactly the issue, because now startups are in that level. You can't only talk to startups, so they need support from a very, very, very young age.
Yeah. And startups are people. Startups are human beings.
Exactly.
They are not a concept.
Yeah, exactly.
They're real life human beings.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's kind of move back to the next thing. They had this thing about chutzpah.
Oh, I love it.
Cojones.
You actually said the balls.
Oh my God! Yes, she just said that. That's awesome. I didn't say that.
Yeah, it's okay when I say it.
Yeah, they were saying you have to have chutzpah.
Yeah,
which is kind of like this. It's just, I'm gonna do it, and I'm gonna put myself out there, and I'm gonna go after it.
Yeah, I'm gonna take that risk.
Right, but it's related to that safe space. I don't believe our entrepreneurs feel backed. I feel like they feel like they're jumping off a ledge, and if nobody's there to kind of blow the wind beneath their wings and support them, and if they fall, they'll actually come and pick them up and say, hey, that's awesome, you give it a good shot, come and work at my company, you have experience.
Exactly.
People see failure as, man, you have leprosy, right? And so it's very difficult to have chutzpah, right, if you have a very kind of pernicious environment.
It's very true. Right. That's actually exactly it. And that it just brings us back to the mindset, and it's at this point you start to wonder, is it a cultural shift that needs to happen? Is it, I don't know.
It's a cultural shift. It's a cultural shift. Let me tell you the truth. Silicon Savannah doesn't have technical challenges, market, venture, talent. We have a cultural issue. We need a cultural transformation. We have too many chiefs and not enough Indians. And at the same time, we have too many people who are, I don't know, it's hard for me to describe this, even call it out, because it's when you're in Silicon Valley, you feel like supported. You feel like you're part of a society. You feel like, you know what, people understand. People will back you. Over here, everybody's on their own, and if I'm not friends with you, I am kind of like almost your enemy.
Okay, I
it's
get
freaking
it.
weird.
Yeah. Which is, oh man, I don't even know what to do with that.
We'll figure it out.
Yeah.
And that's what Impact Africa Network is.
Yeah,
We're creating a network of believers, right? People who are committed to the African development project at the meta level, at that level, right?
And I think what gives me, call it hope, is that if you look at all the different ecosystems, it didn't take 1,000 people.
No, it does not.
Those 10 founders will go through our first cohort. It just keeps growing from there. Going from there. The network and all the people just needs a small group of people who have the understanding and who have the vision, and that's it.
And the commitment, man.
Yeah.
And the commitment. I actually did a tweet storm today about it's about paying forward. It's about depositing first value into a system without expecting anything back. We don't have a tradition of that, right? Our social capital bank account is bankrupt because people are always looking to extract. And people always say, oh, the government is corrupt. No, people on the streets are corrupt. Yeah. Because corruption really is about trying to get something before you actually put something in, or trying to get something more than you actually put in.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I'm saying? So we need to kind of flip the script, because at the end of the day, we're robbing our own selves. The ecosystem will create companies that will create jobs, that will create wealth. And the way this starts is by people, first of all, being willing to put in roho safi without expecting anything back, because that process of giving is actually receiving. We have been robbed of our souls. I mean, I just gotta be honest with you. There's a lot of awesome people in Nairobi. I mean, but people are exhausted and kind of now they're clutching, they're snatching from each other. There's this kind of like, man, I don't know, it's exhausting for people, and I just don't believe that's who we are. Yeah. We gotta turn this ship around. Yeah. On a cultural level.
That's actually very true. I think you've said it all. Yeah. That was deep, man. I don't know, because
so I'm calling out to the founders out here who are doing things. We need to circle the wagons, man. Yeah. We're not trying to be the stars in the ecosystem in Africa Network. We want to partner with founders out here right now. Some of you folks that I have had conversations with, I'm calling out to you guys, because our program has a startup school where you guys will be necessary to come and deploy your knowledge, where you can come and share with the emerging founders to teach them your nuanced experiences that nobody else can do it.
Exactly.
Right? So this is an open embrace. Let's do this thing together.
Yeah.
Anyway, let me get off my my pasta.
No, but that's exactly it. And honestly, if it's one of the things I know I'd said this before, like you can do sort of a copy paste ecosystem thing, but then there are very clear things that work.
There
are very clear underlying factors that
and it's
work.
It's culture.
And that's it.
Yeah, and then there are a couple of things. We're almost done here. We are 30 minutes. We try and keep things to 30 minutes, but these are very important sessions. So we'll
and
keep
I
going.
think we'll actually be doing another one about this very soon. Yeah.
Yeah. So the other thing that stood out too was startups are more admired than big corporate jobs.
Yeah, I think we have a long way to go for that.
like startups actually in Tel Aviv, startups are like the thing to do.
Yeah.
It's not Safcom and all these other kind of big corporate banking things. That's like dinosaur stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Let's build the future. That's what they're about.
Okay.
So it's not like, to me that's like awesome. Like in Silicon Valley, for example, there's two types of people. There's people who like to work at Google, and there's people who leave Google to go do startups.
Yeah.
Right? There are two types of mentality. So, the reality is, man, startups are sexy in Tel Aviv. In Silicon Savannah?
They're not. So here's the thing, Mark. Because for me, I always tend to go back to where does it all start. So when do you first think, hey, I'm going to build a startup? Starts in university, to be honest. So that's where the seed is planted. And in my head, I keep asking myself, I've been thinking about it a lot. I went to JQuat, and every event, not even a big event, even a small meeting, had a banner from GE, had a banner from Intel, had a banner from Google, their Intel school partners, student whatever. These people actually work overtime to drive that in. So when I'm graduating, what do I think about? For me, that's what it looks like. So
and what are your parents telling you?
Exactly. That's what they know.
Go work at BAT, not Africa Stock.
Exactly. Actually have a friend. I think we should totally have her on this podcast. But then ideally, that's it. I think, and because I think one of the things that I think we'll go into is working actively to make startups more visible, because people cannot worry about things they don't know about.
They don't know about, yeah.
Yeah, so people need to see this potential, see this world, because what I've discovered is anyone who actually discovers it never looks back.
Right.
That's a fact.
There are two types of people.
Yeah.
And look, we're not bashing big corporate. I think big corporate has a place. At the end of the day, what we're trying to build is more big.
Different people, man.
Right, but we're trying to also build big corporates.
Yeah,
right? We're trying to get these startups to become big corporates.
Yeah.
Corporates have their place and they are very valuable in society. At the end of the day, we just need to build the next ones. That's it. That's the whole point. And so I guess the message there is, God, we have to start actually making local startups visible and attractive. We've got work to do.
Yeah, and attractive comes back to culture, because there are a bunch of people who go into some startups, and I know someone who left school, went right into a startup. Culture was horrible, she left. So that's also a whole other.
That's another
that's
one.
A whole other.
That's a whole other topic.
Yeah.
That's a whole other topic.
Yeah, that's a whole other area.
Yeah. Another thing too is that we came out of that that video, that documentary about Tel Aviv, is they are unafraid to speak their minds. Like people in that society are unafraid to speak their minds. Over here, you have to be, at a certain. Basically, that's all the way.
Yeah,
it's a hierarchical society. Yeah. You gotta, like one ecosystem actor said, you gotta earn your stripes. Yeah. What the hell? Seriously? If you've got something to contribute, Mubi is like probably, I don't know, I would say maybe 15, 18 years younger than me or whatever.
I know, by the way.
But we are peers.
Yeah. We actually don't even, it's not even
a thing.
Come up.
Right? And it's because she's smart, she's awesome, she kicks butt, she knows stuff I don't know. Yo, I want people like that around me. Exactly. I want people who will cover my blind spots. We cannot have this hierarchical society and expect innovation to happen. Where is it going to come from?
Exactly.
From the old heads?
and that's exactly it. And it still just comes back to, I think it's culture.
But which aspect of culture? It is that fear.
Yeah.
It is that fear of risk, fear of being kind of like, for want of a better term, blackballed by your seniors. All these, man, dude, we have to get over this thing. Human beings are brains, and brains, are dynamic, and it's not about their age. Of course, wisdom comes and experience matters and all that stuff, but people have, can know stuff because there's so much to know nowadays, and no one person can know everything, and no one brain can be the one. If you're the smartest person in the room all the time,
we've actually talked about this. I feel like my biggest fear in life is to be the smartest person in the room, because that means I'm doing something wrong.
What are you doing?
Yeah.
Like, you're basically in nursery school at that point.
Yeah, like you need people who are always challenging how you think, challenging your ideas.
And they feel like they have the freedom to do that. They feel like they have the space to actually be, express their views.
Exactly.
And you know what? I actually did another video last night, and I was just reading a book called, what's that book called? Originals. And it talks about this phenomenon where people, the relationship with people in their jobs, actually this is what it was. It was really about how people who suffer the most in society tend to ascribe the status quo as a given. Like, this is how life is. And so that is actually an emotional painkiller. Because if you actually were to believe that actually this is unfair, it would be too painful for you to deal with it. And so when you look at employees in Kenya, employees a lot of times, they are supposed to be seen and not heard. Just do your job as you've been told. And I think this is a hangover from colonialism, man. Because people just show up, do your job, don't ask questions, just do these very mechanical repeat tasks. And you always wonder why when you interact with people, they always have this glazed look over their eyes. They're kind of like somewhere else because they're already doing a side hustle, right? And you look at the loss of productivity and potential in somebody's main 9-to-5 scenario. Organizations and startups and everybody is losing 90% of the potential of their people because they are not letting their people be fully present and contribute and add to the pool of understanding and actually be flexible in terms of how they approach their job. Anyway, I don't want to go into too much.
You actually just said it. Like, that's actually where the side hustle mentality comes from. Because everyone does a job because you need to have a job and some sort of stability, but then I'm also doing this other thing. But in my thinking, if you had a supportive sort of environment, because you'd run into someone, for example, I want to call it maybe a logistics company. They're working for a logistics company and the side hustle is logistics. So you wonder if this was a supportive environment, all this knowledge would be going into this company, but for them it's more of this is not, I'm just here because I have to be
right.
here.
And that's because how people are treated. They're not made to feel part of the story.
Exactly, yeah.
They're not made to feel they're part of the journey, or from everything from just how you treat people as human beings and valuing them and asking them to contribute and giving them flexible ways to actually do their job, right? And also, and also sharing in the success of the company long term, right? But anyway, let's kind of move on.
I think I'll also share a very interesting talk I watched by a lady, the founder of Front on my Combinator. She's literally talking about culture and how in their company no one has ever left. Since they started, I don't know, it's almost 5 years ago, only 2 people have left. I think one left to do, something, another one left to join their friend's company. And it's because of the culture they've put in, and she was explaining what this culture is. I think that's something amazing for everyone to watch. Yeah.
So the final 2 things, meritocracy over hierarchy, I think we've kind of hit this one on.
Yeah, we've done it.
We've talked about this. And then humility over status.
Yeah.
Value over status. These people in Tel Aviv, man, it's about the kind of work you do. It's not about your Range Rover or your, I don't know, which weird red bottom shoes or some other like seriously kind of thing that's how you get your status. We need to change that.
Yeah.
I swear to God, we are grown-ups. We're out here apportioning status based. It's not about character. It's not about somebody doing what they say and what is it? Saying what. How do you say that thing?
Yeah, practice what you preach.
Practice what you preach, I guess, is what it is. It's like, show up and show out and just being a good citizen. Yeah. Being reliable, doing quality work. That's what they value.
Exactly.
There's nobody else place to drive a Range Rover in Tel Aviv. I don't think. Who cares? I mean, these guys are on some other level. They're pursuing higher ideals. And until we can really start to see that a human being is more than the shitty car they drive, or I until, man, we can stop apportioning status to things and start apportioning status to character and being good for your word and doing quality work and showing up on time and just being somebody who has self-respect, not because of what you have, but because of what you represent. Yo, man, we are done. I'm telling you. You know, but because if you can be bought, if you have such a low price on your head, if there's nothing that you will actually die for, as Mandela said, or somebody awesome like that said, if somebody hasn't found something they're willing to sacrifice for, right, beyond money, that's not somebody who deserves. I think they said you don't deserve to live or something like that. I don't want people like that in my life.
And I totally agree. Actually, when you were talking, all I was thinking about is, so whenever Mark is starting a session with a startup, one of the first things you ask them is, what's your why? Like, why are you doing this? Because of course you want to do it. Everyone wants to build a big company, make money. That's standard.
Actually, they don't want to build a big company.
But then you say, okay, let's
they don't want to build a big company.
But then,
they want to build a company that will buy them a Range Rover and give them the lifestyle.
Yeah, but that's what I mean by quote unquote big. But the first thing is questioning your why as a person for everything. What's your why?
As a member of society.
What drives you? Yeah, and once you figure that out, I think all these other things just follow.
And it's interesting because as a society we've placed value on what's the word I'm looking for, like conspicuous consumption, right? We've placed value in that, right? And you know what? It is the lowest bar of that's not how you build wealth.
Exactly.
Right? You don't build wealth by conspicuous consumption. Some of the most successful people, wealthy people, are the ones who are most humble.
I feel like this is a story you read about every day. You know, it's actually just that. It's exactly that. Yeah.
Cool. I mean, we've covered a lot today.
Yeah,
I think the net of it is
more to
cover.
Yeah.
I think the net of it is just basically we need a cultural transformation. If Silicon Savannah is going to achieve its potential, it's not going to be more capital. It's not going to be just experienced founders participating.
Exactly.
It's not going to be it's not going to be more talent per se. It is a cultural revolution that we need.
Exactly.
Right? It's people who are committed to the big picture, people who are willing to put in before they take out, people who are willing to do quality work. We just have to have that vision in our eyes, in our mind's eye of, a transformed society.
Exactly.
Because if that's not what we're working for, what are we doing?
Yeah. I think that's the biggest correlation that's been missing. People don't see
the big picture.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, with that, we'll pick up this topic again.
You can. I think. Let me finish it up. Yeah, we can. Please, you can check impactafrica.network for more information, and then hit us up on Twitter at IA Network Tweets. Yes, and also on LinkedIn at impactafrica.network.
All right, cool. We'd love to hear from you.
Yeah.
Cheers.